Alright, Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. We have some breaking news about this fight. Yes, this fight is going on August 5th, which just under 2 months away. Not a lot of hype for this fight, if I'm going to be honest. But there is some news and some big news that could help Nate Diaz out. As we know, he is the cardio king, and it looks like it is confirmed that this fight is going to be 10 rounds, which this is Jake Paul's first 10-round fight I'm going to be talking about. Does this give Nate Diaz an advantage, or maybe even a disadvantage? Will it even get to those 9th and 10th rounds? How will this affect the fight? I'm going to be answering all these questions and more. Welcome back, guys. If you guys are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. And look, like I said, I'm trying to hit 20k by the end of the year, 12k by the end of the month. So guys, please chip in. A lot of you guys watch the content and don't subscribe, which I don't get. But if you guys could just hit the subscribe button, we're trying to get to a goal. Anyway, guys, enough warning, guys. Let's just get into this video. All right, Nate Diaz, Jake Paul. Obviously, this was a fight that was in the works for about a few years now. Jake has always wanted to fight Nate Diaz, and this is a fight that makes sense because let's be honest, Nate Diaz isn't exactly the best striker. Definitely nowhere near the best boxer. If you were to, kind of categorize the skill in MMA, it was mostly jiu-jitsu and boxing, so that does kind of help him there. He has trained boxing for a while. He was interested in being a boxer at some point, training with a lot of boxing champions, so I don't doubt that he's training boxing. And I just have to wonder about Nate Diaz's mental state going into this. Like, is this just a payday to him? Is he actually trying to win this fight? Mixed with the fact that Nate Diaz also looked extremely old in that press conference, I'm worried for Nate Diaz. It's no secret, I've been saying I'm afraid that he's gonna get knocked out, and if he does, I might just delete the channel. I might not even talk about it on the channel, and I think all MMA fans are gonna cry if Jake Paul finishes Nate Diaz, which, man, I'm just thinking about that scenario and I don't even want to think about it anymore. So we're going to talk about something else. This fight is now 10 rounds. Now, this is a big deal for multiple reasons. Obviously, Jake Paul started his boxing career fighting 6 rounds against Diaz, moved on to 8 rounds when he fought, I believe, Ben Askren or Tyron Woodley, and he's now moved on to 10 rounds after about 5 years of boxing. And this might be a smart move for Jake, especially if he wants a Tommy Fury rematch, and maybe he says, hey, I want to make it 12 rounds if he feels good in a 10-round fight. We haven't seen Tommy fight that long. Tommy might not be good in a 12-round fight, so that would be an advantage for Jake if he does well in this fight. And of course, marketability wise, a lot of people kind of are already discrediting Nate Diaz, making fun of his opponent. Some sparring footage came out of Nate Diaz, a lot of people discrediting him as an opponent, and I agree. I really don't think that Nate Diaz is going to win this fight. I really doubt that, but this is a way to kind of say to MMA fans, like, hey, Nate Diaz is better in the later rounds, so if it gets to the later rounds, I might gas and Nate might take over. But realistically, we know that's not what's going to happen. Jake is very smart about the opponents he chooses. Unfortunately, he knows what he's doing. That's not going to even happen. I wouldn't be surprised if he even makes it to the 8th round. And this isn't like something last minute. I think maybe that would help Nate Diaz. We have about 2 months for this fight. That's more than enough time to prepare for a 10-round fight. And plus, they've been talking about making this fight 10 rounds for a long time. So I doubt it'll affect much, if I'm going to be real. I got Jake Paul. I don't know if I'm going to say by knockout or not. Maybe just by decision. But 10 rounds is still a massive jump for Jake Paul. But do I think that Jake Paul is going to do well in a 10-round fight? His cardio, in my opinion, is very in and out. In the beginning, he's usually good, and then he kind of fades in the middle and kind of ends strong. He didn't really seem gassed at all in the Tommy Fury fight, and to be fair, he had tons of struggles in that fight, so normally something like that would gas you out, but he actually seemed pretty fit. If anything, I think Tommy was a little bit more tired, but to be fair, he was throwing a little bit more. And for Nate Diaz, we obviously know that this won't be a problem for him at all. He has insane cardio, insane endurance, insane recovery. The guy is a machine. Even though he's getting older, I think that he'll be fine. He runs triathlons, notorious for his cardio, always does well in the later rounds. Literally just 2 years ago, rocked Leon Edwards, the current champion of the UFC, rocked him bad in that final round with like a minute left on the clock. Like, the guy could have gone 5 more rounds that night. So I don't think that this will be a problem, especially that it's just striking and no grappling. I think Nate Diaz will be totally fine in a 10-round fight. I think he'll be fine in like a 15-round fight, if I'm going to be honest. But the thing that does make the 10-round argument kind of interesting is I could see a scenario where Jake Paul kind of messes up where Conor McGregor did. Now, if you guys recall the first Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz fight, Conor McGregor, coming off being the featherweight champion, had a late replacement. Nate Diaz was feeling pretty confident, hurt him multiple times in that fight. Nate Diaz was there to be hit, so Conor went full I'm trying to knock you out mode, threw his shots very hard, threw a lot of shots that just made him tired, and then that's when Nate Diaz took over in that second round, rocked Conor McGregor, and submitted him with a rear naked choke. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's important for Jake Paul to know not to play the games of Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz will not throw a lot. We saw in the Tony Ferguson fight, sometimes you play some games. Jake Paul can't be caught up in the fact and be like, hey, Nate's there to be hit, I'm gonna hit him and I'm gonna knock him out. He has to be very technical, very patient, because there is a chance where he can't knock out Nate Diaz, and even though there is a massive size advantage for Jake Paul, there's a possibility where he can knock him out still, and then let's just say, he does hit him hard, he does throw a lot, and let's just say he does that in the first 4 rounds, and then now he has 6 more rounds, and if he gasses that early, Nate Diaz could win a potential decision. I think that is where we're going to see a bit of a difference, I think, in terms of the decision. Now, if this is a competitive fight, this is bad for Jake Paul. Nate Diaz, like I said, does well in those later rounds, so you could pretty much much assume that Nate Diaz might win those 9th and 10th rounds. I'm not saying that might happen, but I'm just saying if he's going to win any rounds, it's most likely going to be the later rounds. And that's 2 rounds. That's massive. So in a 10-round fight, I mean, he really just needs 3 rounds to draw or 4 more rounds just to win the fight. So I think if this fight goes to a decision, it will make a big deal, but that's a big if because, like I said, Jake Paul has a massive size advantage. We've seen him knock out Tyron Woodley when he was never knocked out before. At least knocked out like that. We've seen him knock out Ben Askren. Brutally knocked out Nate Robinson. The guy does have power. I don't think he has as much power as a lot of people say he does, because then I think if he did, I think he would have knocked out Anderson Silva, which I expected him to do. I thought he was going to knock out Anderson Silva. Wound up taking him to a decision. So I think at this point, Jake is good enough at pacing himself that he knows to stay calm, cool, and collected, and he's got to be careful not to play the games. And I think that'll help him not play the games of Nate Diaz where he's just throwing hard. Seeing that Nate's there to get hit, throwing as hard as he can, just trying to win the fight, trying to knock out Nate Diaz. It's going to be tough. I think if Jake is smart, I think he'll definitely win the fight. I think even if Jake hits him hard, he might win the fight, because I could see Jake Paul knocking out Nate Diaz, as crazy as it sounds. This is boxing. There's not going to be any break on the ground. A huge knockdown is going to be a 10-8 round, which I think does help Nate Diaz a little bit. Gives him a break. I think with that recovery, I think he'll be fine. Most likely, I'm leaning towards a decision, so I think that the 2 rounds might make a little bit of a difference, but I think that Jake Paul is going to comfortably bank a lot of rounds. I think he's going to land a good jabs. Nate Diaz is extremely unorthodox, which will help him. Jake Paul isn't really going to find someone like Nate Diaz to spar with, but I just worry too, because, you know, he's just so open, Nate Diaz, to get hit. And this is boxing. I could see a scenario where also Jake Paul has a standing TKO or just a regular TKO. I don't think he's going to flatline Nate Diaz. Watch as it happens. But all in all, let me wrap this up. Do I think the 10 rounds are good for Nate Diaz? Yes. I'm going to be honest. I think it's better to have it than not, but most likely, will it make a difference? No. I think there's a possibility that Jake wins those 9th and 10th rounds. And like I said, I think if Jake wins this fight, he's going to be patient. He can't just, you know, say, hey, Nate's there to get hit. Let me just land big shots. Because Nate could eat those. Nate could even get knocked down, get back up, and eat those. And then you're dealing with a situation where you just throw it as hard as you can. You're gassed in the later rounds, and Nate Diaz is just on you. Volume, pressure. And that's what's going to help Nate Diaz win this fight. He has to be pressure forward, throwing lots of combinations. We saw Jake Paul kind of just cover up when Tommy Fury threw combinations at him. And granted, Tommy Fury's probably a lot more faster and a lot more technical in his combinations than Nate Diaz will be, but that's his pathway to win the fight. Guys, let me know what you guys think about the fight. Let me know what you guys think about the 10 rounds. It was breaking news, just came out. It kind of slipped under a lot of people's radar because there isn't a lot of hype for this fight. And if I'm going to be honest and tell you why, it's because this is not a good matchup. Let's be real. Jake just lost to Tommy Fury. This kind of just seems like an easy rebound fight to get a win, get comfortable, to rematch Tommy Fury next year. The fight to make was KSI Jake Paul. They fumbled it. This was a great opportunity to do it. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't really care whose fault it is. Just saying, they fumbled it. This was a perfect opportunity. Didn't work out. And I honestly don't know how well this pay-per-view is going to do. Big mistake announcing it early. As I said when I made the video talking about the fight originally, they should have announced it around here. The hype would have been crazy. Do a press conference in a few weeks. Do another press conference, you know, a couple weeks later leading up to the fight. Have fight week, another press conference. Then that would have been great. It would have been a lot of hype. They fumbled it. MVP fumbled it. Terrible job. I won't say MVP fumbled it. It could have been Nate Diaz's promotion, but the Tommy Fury fight, in my opinion, did so well because it was announced so early. Like, it was announced, I think, in the middle of January with a month left. There wasn't a lot of time to talk about the fight, so naturally you get more excited for it. That's my take on things. I'm not sure how well this will do on pay-per-view. I think it would have done a lot better if it was announced later. Maybe this does 600K. I don't know. You know, Nate Diaz is attached to this, so I think it could do pretty well in that department, but I think any chance of getting it near 1 million are gone now. Wouldn't even be surprised if it does 400K because, you know, I can imagine a lot of people pirating this thing. Tommy Fury brings an audience that is willing to pay for a pay-per-view. You know, the traditional boxing fans. Nate Diaz, though a UFC star, I just think that there's going to be a lot of pirating for this event. Guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think about the fight. Like I said, please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 12K by the end of the month or 20K by the end of the year. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.